speaking to you from beautiful Philadelphia. What are the first things you think of when I ask the question, what makes for good fiction writing? Go ahead and think of a number of things, and I bet you that that list that you come up with are going to be exactly the things you can focus on for the type of writing you're doing to get as far as you will get with your pursuits as a fiction writer. I can tell you one of the things that is at the top of my list, and that is the ability to draw the reader in. Writing that can spellbind the reader, hypnotize them, draw them into the story, make them forget about themselves for a little bit and get lost in the story. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about techniques you can use to achieve this effect. And these are only a couple of techniques. There are a lot more out there. When most of us started being creative, because that is a major thing our brains do, we instinctually did it the right way. And it was only later when we started taking fiction writing seriously that many of us started doing it the wrong way. Let's look at what happens when we sit down to write a story. Okay, we have the story idea. Okay, we need to work on the characters. So we start character drafting, start figuring out what they're about, what they'll do, what part they'll play. Now let's take a look at what is happening. We are outside of the characters. We think of them as not part of ourselves. We are objectifying them. As we pay attention to creating them, as we think about them, as we develop who they are, as we work them into our stories, we are creating these entities that are outside of ourselves that we can look at, that we look at essentially from a distance from ourselves. Now I ask you, how are characters like that going to draw readers in? Let's look at the way we were creative when we first started being creative. We would pretend to be other people. We would pretend to be in the middle of other lives. And what we were still creating a character, but it was so much, we took on the role of the character. We put ourselves in that character. That our whole creativity was what that world was like through those characters' eyes, what it felt like to be that character, how that character thought as if we ourselves were thinking those thoughts. So essentially, that is a very different kind of character, one that if presented in a story will naturally draw the reader in, because it's a character written for the reader to occupy, to pretend to be for a time being. So as an exercise, what you can do for a while is totally abandon all previously learned approaches to writing and start a daily 10-minute writing exercise where what you do is you start out pretending to be a different character, and immediately you are inside that character, and everything you write in these brainstorm exercises are things that happen to you as that character. And practice this so that you internalize it, so that it becomes a deeper part of the strategy you use to writing. Sometimes I think to become a better writer, we sort of have to forget that we're writing altogether. Writing is a tool used to being a better imaginer, to being a better virtual reality creator, to be a better, these stories are basically places in the fourth dimension. It's places that take place in time. It's very important to pay attention to what is happening with our imagination, and when we do that, we write in such a way that will naturally pull people into the story. If you want to draw people into your story, if you want people to get lost in your story, and this is what it means to be entertained. When people forget about themselves for a while and get lost in a story, that is the greatest level of entertainment. And the most important thing to do as storytellers is for ourselves to get lost in the story. When we contemplate these stories in our own imaginations, if we are lost in them, looking into the subconscious, I get the feeling like the bottom drops out. There's so much, no matter how much you can become conscious of what is happening subconsciously, there is still so much that we can barely become aware of. And yet they're happening. We're communicating all these subconscious things all the time. And it especially happens in writing. And one way to appreciate this is the next time you read the book, try to intuit how much the writer forgot themselves and became the characters in the story. And you can't pinpoint it on a certain word or a certain phrase, and it isn't always so obvious that you can say, oh, well, they wrote in such and such a style, and that's why it draws the reader in. It's much more these subconscious choices of words transfer the writer's internal experience through the pages to the reader's internal experience. And so much of the real power of this effect happens on the subconscious level in writing, that the best thing we can do as writers is to develop that tool, that ability to imagine, become great imaginers. And when we do this, we can become the characters in our stories. We can go to those worlds that we are creating. I've read great stories, seen great movies, and have gotten the feeling that the writers were outside of the characters the whole time, which is fine, you know. And when I've read books and watched movies where I could tell that the writer would become those characters, those were very powerful. Those are the stories where I was drawn in. It sucked me in, and there I was all of a sudden in the middle of an imagined reality. So if you didn't make a New Year's resolution, or if you've already forgotten the one that you did make, go ahead and write down on a piece of paper, I am going to become my this character this year. Or, you know, really focus on dedicating a certain amount of creative time to becoming, to pretending to be those other characters. The next time you're about to write a character draft, don't do it. This time, try something new. Go ahead and do what actors do. Get up from your desk and start pacing back and forth, and while you're doing that, pretend to be that other character. And walk back and forth and ask yourself, what did my day go like? What friend or family member am I in a fight with right now? How much money do I need to pay that bill for? What part of my body is wounded right now? Just start pretending to be that character. And do that for 20 minutes and try to remember what it used to be like when you really could pretend and then become these other people. And that is the goal, is to try to become these other people. And once you've done that a little while, then you can sit down and write out a character sketch. So these can be temporary goals, to do these exercises, to make a point of becoming the fictional characters you're creating. But the more that you do this, the more that it will become part of every aspect of your writing. So that if you do this exercise for a few weeks, then the next time you're going to writing, your mind has you've carved new pathways of thought in your mind. And you will, when you are trying to think of dialogue that character is going to say, next time, subconsciously, you're going to slip into the shoes of that character and occupy their space. And instead of second guessing them from the outside, you're going to be where they would be and know what they would say and why they would say one thing here and a different thing there. You might have heard of this idea of different aptitudes of intelligence. So some people might have a great aptitude for music, and then or a great aptitude for math, and they come out of these different physical structures of the brain that can be developed, but they are kinds of intelligence. There is a kind of intelligence that writers, actors, many artists, it would be for our benefit to develop, and that is the empathy intelligence. That is the ability to occupy someone else's shoes, to become them, to see the world through their eyes. The reason I describe it as an aptitude is because as you start developing your writing skills along these lines, you're really going to be surprised at how far you get, because you're not just trying to learn a new thing, you're taking advantage of brain structures that are already there waiting to be developed. Now, there are great fiction writers out there who start to feel that they are channeling these spirits, or that they are being possessed, and in my opinion, this really shows how powerful this experience of empathy can be, to feel that we do actually really become other people other than ourselves, and really do have these experiences extraordinarily different and vivid from our own. This is another way that humans are social animals. We are equally individual and socially minded. And that socially minded side means that we are not restricted to our own experiences, but that we can have a vast and vivid and diverse, and we could become hundreds of different characters, each of them with very distinct personalities and very different senses of humors and manners of speaking and quirks and original things. Each of them could have their own different original insights that we ourselves could never have. And if you wonder, can this really happen while we're awake? Remember, when we're sleeping, this does happen all the time. All the people in our dreams are these doing these things we ourselves would never dream of doing, say these things we ourselves would never come up with. And this just shows how far-reaching the world of the subconscious mind can go. And as an aptitude, if we develop this ability to become these other people, we open up this whole new world of experience and rich imagination. And as fiction writers, isn't that exactly what we want to do? A great research topic would look into how actors do this. How do actors get into their characters? Because as far as all the different art forms out there, actors have probably developed this much more than writers have. So you'll have these actors, in very well-known movies, who will go off for weeks and become their other character. If their character is a crazy person wandering down the highway, they will go and do that, and they'll, eat grass and whatever it takes for them to lose themselves, forget themselves, and really become that other character. Another way that this is not just an ability but a mental aptitude is that when you develop it, it'll be like this thing that you now have. The better you get at it, you know how when you get home and you want to play a video game, you have this other virtual reality you go to. You can have an equivalent power of experience inside your mind by developing this ability. If you see anyone who's really good at doing this, it's as if a whole new spirit occupies their body. You watch, first they are themselves, and then you see like this whole change overcome them, and then they are that other person, and it's eerie and it's very spellbinding. And again, I can't overemphasize that any effort you put towards developing this aptitude is going to, from then on, become part of the rest of your writing. Then when you're working on that story you have been working on and love to work on, it's going to have this overall effect on it. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any feedback for this topic, anything that you think other viewers might be able to read and it will help their writing, please leave it in a comment below. I want to thank everyone who has given me feedback on my videos. You are a huge driving force in me making these. If you like my videos and want to get me back, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell a friend. The story I'm working on, Terrible Immunity, you can see it. It's in episode form, illustrated and narrated, and some of it animated at solomation.com. They're free to view. I hope your writing and your imagined world traveling and exploring go great, and have a good day.